It's 45 days to the presidential and parliamentary elections. Good afternoon and welcome to Election Brief with me, Emefa Akosia Adeti. We're live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 125, all social media handles and around the world on myjoyonline.com. Election headquarters is brought to you by Petrosol Platinum Energy, Energizing Dreams, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and together as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, German Ozone Medical Center, Alternative Therapy, Dental Wellness and Beauty, Chopbox Technologies, a convenient service, and Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging the gap for positive youth development. Please stay for details. Welcome back. Now, the Speaker of Parliament yesterday adjourned the House indefinitely amid controversy over 4 vacant seats on grounds of crossing carpet following the affected members of Parliament's decision to file for the December 7, 2024 parliamentary elections in different capacities, either as independent candidates or on the ticket of a political party. Now, following that, the NPP side, led by their leader Alexander Apenyomakin, filed an ex parte motion at the Supreme Court, asking that the ruling of the Speaker should be halted. Now, the Supreme Court, after hearing the plaintiff, directed the Speaker to halt implementing the ruling until final determination of the matter. Here is the Speaker, Alban Bagbin, at the sitting yesterday.
In accordance with Standing Orders 59, adjourn the House indefinitely. That is sine die. I want to quote Standing Orders 59:1. It says, the Speaker may, in consultation with leadership, suspend a meeting of the House indefinitely or for a period determined by the Speaker, having regard to the public interest and the exigencies of the state of affairs in the country. Honorable members, I have consulted leadership and I am exercising my discretion to decide to suspend the meeting of the House indefinitely. The House is accordingly adjourned sine die.
The Speaker's statement, however, fell short of accepting or rejecting the order of the Supreme Court, suspending his ruling on the vacancy. This has opened a major controversy on the status of the affected MPs. A retired Supreme Court Judge, William Atuguba, thinks until the order is set aside, the Speaker must respect and implement it.
Quorum will arise if the party is the Parliament is sitting. Nonetheless, as a legal question, court orders take effect according to their terms. When a court order is made, it is to be obeyed according to its terms, unless it's set aside.
Okay.
And so, you know, at first, it was a deep-seated principle of the common law that if an act is null and void, it is automatically null and void. You don't even need court process. But later, there was a vote fast, probably on grounds of public policy, peace, and that kind of thing. And particularly in Ghana, it was said that notwithstanding the nullity of any court process, you can't disregard it. Your only way is to go and have it set aside. That's how to extricate yourself from its effect.
Okay.
Originally, when this matter arose, and I read those provisions. I thought they will relate to somebody, if somebody is contesting towards election into the next parliament, that this provision will not hold him as having crossed carpet. But I must confess that when I thought of it over and over again, and particularly the terms of the reasoning of the speaker was pronouncing on this matter, and even having regard to the realistic practice of the parties themselves. We all know of Michael Quest's time. You know what happened there?
Yeah.
Yes. And so, you see, politics aside, always, when things are settled, and that's my trouble with politicians. Things are hardly settled. They are settled in one way when it is in their favor, they are happy with it. When it goes against them, they try to unsettle it by all means. These days, when people are talking law, I feel that we have to distinguish between political law and actual law.
Also, senior law lecturer at the University of Ghana, Dr. Justice Shimsai, says the Supreme Court's use of the word stay was ineffectual because what they are seeking to stay had already happened.
If you take the Supreme Court's order on the face of it, it is simply saying that the courts, Parliament should stay the execution of its declaration. And I think that the court's using of the word stay was, in a way, ineffectual because what the court was seeking to stay from happening had already happened. So the previous day, which was the 17th, Parliament declared the seat state, vacated, and then the balance in the House, changed, so that the former minority became majority, and the former majority became minority. Okay. So if the court is making an order which is directing the speaker to stay the execution of that declaration, that could not be something that would be done because it has already happened. The changes have already occurred. And in fact, it's based on those changes that the plaintiff, that is Honorable Afenyomakin, went to the court to ask the court that, look, this is what has happened in Parliament, and I'm asking you to reverse. So the order is, as it stands, on the face of it, has some problems. But when you read the order together with the proceedings that are in court, the processes that were filed in court, you could see that the stay could be replaced with the word reverse. Now, when the word reverse is replaced with a stay, what is going to happen is that then Parliament would have to take a decision for the reversal. It would have been a different thing if Parliament was in the process of taking the decision and the Honorable Afenyomakin went to court to stop Parliament, and the court said Parliament should stay.
Now, still on the matter of vacant seats controversy, private legal practitioner and host of Newsfile on Joy News, Samson Ladianyenene, says disobedience of the court's order can only be suggested if the affected MPs were not allowed into the chamber.
That there was a disobedience of the order if those affected members of Parliament attempted to enter Parliament and they were disallowed, or they entered Parliament and they were not counted when they had to be counted for whatever purposes, or they had to vote and their votes, were ignored and not counted. Or they wanted to make a contribution and they were disallowed from making a contribution on the basis of the Speaker's information to Parliament. To the extent that there is no evidence that they attempted to access Parliament and they were prevented. You cannot suggest, not by the stretch of any imagination, that the orders of the court have not been complied with.
Meanwhile, the NDC caucus in Parliament is accusing the Supreme Court of failing to check the authenticity of the claims the NPP leader Alexander Penyumakin relied on in his application before the court. According to MP for Tamale Central, Mutala Mohammed, the record of Parliament that was used had not been approved.
The Supreme Court completely erred. Penyumakin went to court on the basis of proceedings that happened on Thursday. And if you know parliamentary practice, what you have been a reporter,
of course.
Whatever happened in Parliament, the next day is when you approve
the proceedings of the previous day.
That's why we have votes
after correction, actually.
And most often you have corrections until it is the proceedings are corrected and approved. You can't take that as an official document of Parliament. And mind you, there is an officer in Parliament who indeed is being investigated as having leaked the raw proceedings of Parliament to the NPP. They went to court with this misleading, proceedings of Parliament, and the Supreme Court made their determination based on what Penyumakin and his lawyers presented to them.
But doesn't the resolution, or perhaps the ruling read by Mr. Speaker on the floor as captured by the record, doesn't that constitute finality on the matter?
It doesn't.
You are saying that until the official report is produced.
I'm surprised you are raising this. You have been.
I'm asking because people are listening.
The reason why I don't want you to ask, because you have been one of the experienced reporters in Parliament. Whatever happens, let's say today, assuming we were to sit tomorrow, we will then approve the vote and proceedings of today tomorrow.
Right.
That is when you are doing the vote and proceedings, the Speaker would go page by page so that the necessary corrections are done on it before you approve it. Until the approval is done, it cannot be deemed to be an official, statement coming from Parliament.
There's been another step of the official report.
So that comes and in fact, it must be approved by the Speaker.
Right.
So if we had a proceedings in Parliament on Thursday, you witness what happened today. We approved what happened on Thursday today. Yet this was the misleading statement that Fenyo took to the Supreme Court. And they couldn't do due diligence. And that for me is worrying. The Supreme Court, let me finish.
No, because I want a preliminary comment so that I can bring it in.
They couldn't do due diligence. So the Supreme Court was misled into believing that what Penyumakin and his lawyers presented to them was the factual statement approved by Parliament. It was not. So that's why I'm saying that what the Supreme Court did as a political science student,
right.
I still remember the things, what the theories propounded by the likes of John Locke, Professor Montesquieu, and co. The purpose for separation of powers is not to tilt power towards one arm. I am saying that what the Supreme Court did, they have an exclusive authority to interpret the law. The directive of the Supreme Court was not interpreting the law. They were directing, or they directed Parliament to stay.
Of course, for 10 days.
I'm saying that what has that got to do with interpretation of law? If the Supreme Court had said that what Parliament did and what Mr. Speaker did was not in sync with the Constitution or the laws of this country, but that directives, Parliament is not enjoying. And frankly speaking, I was expecting the Speaker to cite the judges who sat on the case for contempt of Parliament. Only two institutions, only two arms of government have the capacity to cite for contempt, the judiciary and Parliament. Only two. So I'm saying that I was expecting the Speaker to cite the Supreme Court for contempt, and the speed and alacrity with which the Supreme Court sat on the matter when they themselves said that they won't sit on Friday.
Now, former Supreme Court Judge Justice William Atuguba has waded into the debate surrounding the controversy in Parliament over the 4 vacant seats. Now, he argued that the proper course of action to resolve the issue should have been the High Court, not the Supreme Court.
Well, I think that the proper step would have been to go to the High Court, because specifically Article 90, let me read it, 97(1). A member of Parliament shall vacate his seat in Parliament. All kinds of situations. Then it gets down to F. If he resigns from office as a member of Parliament by writing under his hand address to the Speaker, or G, if he leaves the party of which he was a member at the time of his election to Parliament, to join another party, or seeks to remain in Parliament as an independent member. This is the kind of vacation of office that's involved in this matter, not so?
Yeah.
All right. Now, it goes on to Article 99, 1. All right, let me read it. It's a short provision. 99(1). The High Court shall have jurisdiction to hear and determine any question whether A, the person has been validly elected as a member of Parliament, or the seat of a member has become vacant. Okay? Yeah. So the question of vacancy of parliamentary office is given to the High Court, not given to the Supreme Court.
Well, but the argument people put up is that this has to do with interpretation of the Article 97G and H, and that's why the Supreme Court is clothed with the authority to do that.
You see, that's why sometimes there's a need to be very, very careful in handling constitutional matters of interpretation. It's a very tricky and involved matter. Yes, the Supreme Court has exclusive jurisdiction in the interpretation and enforcement of the Constitution. Nonetheless, the Supreme Court from the beginning held that where the provision is clear and unambiguous, there's nothing to interpret. So if a matter arises in any court, it can even be a district court, the lowest, once it's clear, they can go ahead and apply. In that case, they are applying the Constitution, not even they carry it to enforcement. So the mere fact that a constitutional provision comes up does not necessarily mean that the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. This original jurisdiction is widely couched.
The vice presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Mahamadu Bawumia, has ridiculed attempts by the National Democratic Congress to become majority in Parliament 6 weeks to the general elections. Now, he asserts that the opposition party is scheming at this because it has identified that the NPP will win the presidential elections and have a convincing majority in the next Parliament. Dr. Bawumia was speaking at a rally in Ho during his campaign tour at the Volta region.
They are panicking. The NDC knows that they are losing this election. They know that we are winning this election. So they are panicking. Just think about it. We have 6 weeks to an election. And their only concern is that they want to be a majority for 6 weeks. When you have been a minority for 8 years. Why? What is the rush? Because they know they have lost the election. election for 6 weeks. But for us, we know that we are going to stay focused. We will not be distracted. We are the majority party, and we will be the majority party on December the 7th.
Whereas the chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Asiedu Nketia, has urged supporters to take money offered to sway their votes but still vote for the NDC. Speaking to party supporters at Obom-Domiabra constituency in the Central Region, Asiedu Nketia described the funds distributed by the governing NPP as stolen money, stressing that for the collective good of the country, voters should reject the NPP at the polls.
I don't think woman Safa say woman Kuteska. Etisicano almost say woman Kuta Aba Emma or one cow. Etisicano and our Maya you say woman debate election. I don't think Enterprise who said NPP candidate they the onye shasia obeshasia do achicheska e di amamu de be wura ma fiemu anajo ye je skama ye ma okura ni e di ama esremo ye kan se onkwa onye sikadia onkwa utimi ko je pipe no magruma onkwa onye sikadia onkwa ultimi nya final makrum ha ana onkwa so ultimi nya secondary school no okrum ha adunti no ya nyere dia babua ye nyina ho rather than dia babua onkwa wa fu na sika no de me de me nkwa wo mo de ba esense eye muzika ana wo mo anfa nya kwan wo mo anfa nya nsuo woman fanya ya sabia woman fanya college no na woman cha woman bibi na e bibi brewa mesra odeba e mane mfanko je wadi.
Currently, the NPP is holding a press conference and the communications director, Mr. Richard Agah, is speaking. We shall cross over.
21. The document consists of 11 chapters, each directing the NDC on various disruptive, unfair, and outright crude tactics to aid its capturing of power in 2024. I strongly urge Ghanaians to read this secret document, which will introduce you to the dark corners of the NDC's corporate mind. It is a must-read for voters, especially the youth and the middle class, because the document and its prescriptions make nonsense of patriotism, responsibility, democracy, and political ethics. The secret document goes beyond the ordinary strategy.
Sorry for that poor quality feed. We shall cross over when the feed is quite okay. But still on election brief, the chairman for the NDC as well also promised that a future NDC government will complete all abandoned and unfinished projects in the constituency if given the need to leave the country.
Abaya oba no yebedura e dey na dey e na yesusu say ya domi abrafo wo betom nti anya we bra na na kasa mati senior high school asem eno dey na meaning dada kra nsam ye ba if we say yen try to say baby ayakopɛ nsase say ye cc 200 E-blocks no na ehaka ho. akase no kura nte ho enka tasem wie na ya isase ena bibi free soro beti bayira homo President Mahamadu Bawumia atise project bia ya wie no ye ba beto ani nyina so.
Well, the executive director of Pen Plus Fight, Jerry Sam, has urged political parties in Ghana to follow through on the promises outlined in their manifesto. He emphasized that educating voters, particularly first-time voters, on these manifesto could help reduce tribal and religious biases in voting decisions. Jerry Sam made these remarks at the launch of the Voters' Compass in Accra.
The target for this project is actually the youth and the first-time voters who are just coming into the the scene and they don't know what is at play. So those are our targets. When we did the baseline, about 40% said that previously they voted based on political party manifestos. We want to shift this number to at least 70% of voters, because once we're able to shift that high number, then there will be a reduction in the other dynamics of religion, tribal, and what have you. So that is the idea, that we'll get a significant mass of the youth who are voting based on policies. And once that is done, the outcome is that they understand the policies. Whoever wins power will know what you stand for, and it will be easy for us to hold you to account. Now we've thrown the sunshine on their policies, and now when you come, your commitment level will be high. And talking about commitment, we don't want manifestos to, as it's been in the past, to be just mere words on paper or just a ticking box. We want them to be actionable commitments that will lead us to our development.
Meanwhile, the Deputy German Ambassador to Ghana, Sanvine Jansen, expressed confidence that the launch of the Voters' Compass, which aims to highlight the programs and policies of various political parties, will help voters make more informed, issue-based decisions at the polls.
This year we will see around about 700,000 voters that go to the ballot box for the first time. And this could definitely have a very decisive impact on who at the end of the day will win the election, which party, which presidential candidate. And with the parliament being the sovereign and representative of the voters and of the Ghanaian people, we would be very interested to see an election that really represents the interests of the people, and a decision to vote based on an informed decision that really takes into account the interests of each and every single voter, so that they can make sure that at the end of the day, the parliament that sits there is representing them to the best that they can do. When we look at the Voters' Compass, they looked at the various party manifestos and the manifestos of the independent candidates. And in there we find questions, for example, should there be a review of the free secondary education program that we have at the moment? Should there be free health care for everybody? Should there be a flat tax rate that is introduced? And all kinds of different questions. And not every party and every candidate has the same view on this. And I mean, I would assume that a lot of the first-time voters don't necessarily know very exactly which candidate supports which decisions on these, but it has a very big impact on their life, if healthcare, for example, is free or not. So this is what I mean with the interests that people have. I mean, it really goes into the money and their pockets at the end of the day in some of these regards. And they should also base the voting decision based on these factors. So for me, the Voters' Compass is really a tool that is educative and informative and really helps people to take politically well-informed and grounded decisions.
Many thanks for joining us today. Election Headquarters is brought to you by Petrosoil Platinum Energy, Energizing Dreams, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, together as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, German Ozone Medical Center, Alternative Therapy, Dental Wellness and Beauty, Chobos Technologies, a convenient service, and Youthbridge Foundation, bridging the gap for positive youth developments. There's more stories on myjoyonline.com.